All right, so our test tomorrow is 3.1 through 3.4. So the review is separated by sections. So looking at 3.1, it says solve the equation using square roots. So how would I solve number 8? Stephanie. Just square root both sides. Thank you. So G would be equal to what? Plus or minus H. So we just take the square root of 64, and anytime you take the square root of both sides, you mean plus or minus. All right, so let's look at 12. This one says solve by factoring. So how would I factor this? Awesome. We need it to be equal to 0 in order to factor it. I wrote the question wrong. So it should be x squared plus x minus 6. So you were right. It should be positive 3 and negative 2. So x plus 3 and x minus 2 is equal to 0. And then we would just set both of them equal to 0. So x plus 3 equals 0. X minus 2 is equal to 0. So x is equal to negative 3 and x is equal to positive 2. Why did I move the 6 to the left side and not the other 2 to the right side?
Because everything has to be on the left side, so you can just go into 0 because that's just the rule.
It doesn't have to be on the left side.
It makes it easier because then the variables are not negative.
But we love it when it's a positive x squared. It's so much easier to factor when you have a positive x squared. So you would always just want to move it to the side that makes that positive. So 18 says solve the equation using any method. Which method would we want to use to solve this? We want to divide negative 3 first. Move that to the other side. So then I have p plus 2 squared is equal to negative 4. Then we square root it. Perfect.
Wait, how do you know?
Because whenever you have a parenthesis squared, you want to get that all by itself and then just square root it to get rid of it. So we square root it, so it'll cancel. So p plus 2 is equal to what? Plus or minus? 2i, because I have a negative under the square root, so that comes out and turns into an i. And the square root of 4 is 2, so plus or minus 2i. And then what's the last step? Move the 2, so I would subtract 2 on both sides. Can I combine negative 2 and 2i? No, so it'd be negative 2 plus or minus 2i. All right, so for 3.2, let's take a look at number 6. So I have to find the value of x and y that satisfies the equation. The equation got cut off, but it should be a 2i at the end. How would I solve for x? Awesome. We set the real parts equal to each other. So 22 is equal to 2x. Divide by 2. So what does x equal? 11. Perfect. So to solve for y, we set the imaginary parts equal to each other. So I have 1/5 yi and negative 2i. So how would I get rid of that 1/5? Multiply both sides by 5. You could divide by 1/5, but essentially you'd be doing the same thing. So multiplying by 5 is just a little bit easier. So I have yi is equal to negative 2 times 5 is negative 10i. And then the last step, we just want to divide by I to get rid of it. So y is equal to negative 10. All right, let's look at 14. What would I need to do to solve 14? How do I multiply these two together? FOIL. So we start by multiplying the first. So 5 times 5 would be 25. The outer would be plus 15i. The inner would be minus 15i. And then the last would be negative 9i squared. What should I do next? Combine like terms. What's a like term?
Two i's.
The i's. What's 15i minus 15i? 0, they cancel. What else can I do? The I squared, what does it turn into? -1, which makes the -9 what? A positive 9. So anytime we have an I squared, we can cancel it out and change it to -1, and then multiply that times the number it's attached to. So that turned into a +9. So now my only like terms are 25 and 9. So it's 25 plus 9? 34. So looking at 3.2 question 2, so we're just simplifying the square root. So I'm going to write it up here. What should I do first? Take out the negative, so that turns into an I. Then what are 2 factors of 40?
4 and 5.
And
that would be 5 and 2. 4 we put 2, 5 and 2, and then put it in the square root.
One step at a time. What are my pairs? 2 and 2. So where do the 2's go? It goes outside as just 1, 2. What stays on the inside? 5 and the other 2. What do I do to those 2 numbers? Multiply. But I also already had, guys, a 2 outside. So what do I do to those 2 2's? Multiply them together. So it'd be 4i square root 10. So that's the answer to number 2. So let's take a look at number 2. So here it says, solve the equation using square roots. How can I solve this using square roots when I don't have anything that's squared? What do I need to do? Is k squared divisible by 8? No.
Move the 64.
Perfect. The left side is a perfect square trinomial, so I would factor this. So when it says to solve by taking the square roots, just factor what you have on one side already because it's going to be a perfect square trinomial. So what are 2 factors of 64 that add to -16? -8 and -8. So this would be k minus 8 squared is equal to -8. Now what can I do? Square root it. So k minus 8 is equal to what?
I square root 8.
And then 8 factors into 4 and 2. 2 factors into 2 and 2.
2 square root 2.
Perfect. 2 square root 2. But what am I missing here? Plus or minus. Don't forget. And then what's the last step? Add 8. Can I combine 8 and 2i square root 2?
No.
Nope. So this would be k is equal to 8 plus or minus 2i square root 2. All right, so if it says solve using square roots and it doesn't give you a parentheses squared, you have to make the parentheses squared. For the test, it gives you directions for every single question on how to solve, so you have to solve it that way. For number 8, so it says find the value of c that makes the expression a perfect square trinomial, then write the expression as the square of a binomial. So how do I find the value of c that makes this a perfect square trinomial, George?
Divide 20 by 2 and then square it.
Perfect. So my formula is b over 2 squared, and my b is 20, so that would be 20 over 2 squared. What's 20 over 2?
10 equal to 100 squared.
So 100. So our value of c is 100. So c is equal to 100. That's one part of our answer. How do I write it as the square of a binomial? What goes into my parentheses squared? Awesome. X, well, here it's y, but same. X plus 10. So it's whatever's squared here and the number before we square it. So that's why it's y plus 10. All right, so next let's look at 10. 10 says solve the equation by completing the square. What can I do first to complete the square?
You could divide this by 5.
Awesome. We like it when our squared variable, that x squared, or here it's an h squared, when the coefficient's 1. So I'm going to divide everything here by 5. So if it's not 1, make sure you find the GCF and take that out. So this is now h squared minus h minus 3 is equal to 0. So I took out the GCF. All right, so now what should I do to complete the square? Add the 3. So we always want just our variables on one side. So I have h squared minus h. I'm going to leave a space to complete the square is equal to negative, oh, I add 3, so plus positive 3. What can I do next? What's the formula I use to complete the square?
5/2².
What's my b here? Negative 1. So that would be negative 1 over 2 squared. What is negative 1 over 2 squared? Awesome. I would square the negative 1 and square the 2, so that would be 1/4. So I'm adding 1/4 on the left side. Where else do I have to add 1/4? To the right side too. What's going to go into my parentheses squared?
H plus 1/4 minus.
H plus 3.25.
Huh?
Right.
H minus.
I can't tell if it's you're adding or subtracting, but it's
Wait, that kind of makes
H
sense though.
plus 1/2.
Minus 1/2 because this is a negative. So it's whatever's in the parentheses here, whatever we had before we squared it. So it'd be h minus 1/2.
Wait, where did the 1/2 come from? Oh, that's right.
So in here we had b over 2 squared. Then we want to add the right side. So when we're adding fractions, we need a common denominator. So I'd make this 12 over 4. So it would be 13 over 4. Because I just add the numerators, keep the denominator the same. What can I do next?
And how would it be 13 over 4?
What can I do next to solve? Square root both sides. So h minus 1/2 is equal to what?
Plus or minus.
Plus or minus. We can just leave it as 13 over 4. That's fine. The square root of 13 over 4.
Could you simplify it? Because
You can. So it would be
I'm making that 13 square root over 2.
square root 13 over 2, yeah. And then what would the last step be? Move the 1/2. So I would add 1/2 to both sides. So h is equal to 1/2 plus or minus square root 13 over 4. Or if you simplified it, that's okay too.
They're going to be
On the review, I already posted the answer key. And there's some even ones that I picked that I said skip. So 14 was one of those. So you skip 14 if you want to make a note of it. You don't have to do 14. And also 16 you don't have to do. Now again, on the review, it says only do the evens, but I want to do number 9 because you may see one like this on the test. So for number 9, it says solve by completing the square. How would I complete the square here?
Q squared, then Q plus 6 squared.
So I'm going to distribute the q, so it'd be q squared plus 6q is equal to 1. I'm going to leave a space because that's where I'm going to complete the square. What's going to go into that space? Yes.
B divided by 2.
And what's my b here? 6. So 6 over 2 squared. 6 over 2 is what? So 3 squared is 9. What should I do next? Add 9 to the other side also, because whatever we add in that space there, we also have to add it to the other side. What's going to go into my parentheses squared?
Q plus 3 squared.
Q plus 3. Perfect. So Q plus 3 squared. And then what's that equal to? 10. Awesome. What should I do next? Square root both sides. So Q plus 3 is equal to what? Plus or minus square root 10. Awesome. Can I simplify square root 10? No. The only two factors are 2 and 5, and I don't have a pair, so I can't circle anything and take it out. So it's just plus or minus square root 10. And what's the last step? Subtract 3. So Q is equal to what?
Minus 3 plus or minus square root 10.
Awesome. Negative 3 plus or minus square root 10. So 3.4. 3.4 is all about the quadratic formula and the discriminant. So our quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. This you have to know for tomorrow. All right, so let's take a look at 4. So it says solve using the quadratic formula. What do I need to do first? Gabby. Label my a, b, and c. So we want it to be equal to 0. This one's already equal to 0, so now I can just label my a, b, and c. So a is 4, b is negative 3, and c is negative 5. And then I can plug everything in. So this would be negative b, so negative 3, plus or minus the square root of negative 3 squared minus 4 times a, which is 4, times c, which is negative 5, over 2a, so 2 times 4. Yeah. So you can just change the sign. I just wrote it to show you that that's how it becomes a positive 3. So this is 3 plus or minus. What is 3 squared? 9. And then here I have negative 4 times negative 5. I would personally multiply 4 times negative 5 first, because that would be negative 20. And then multiply negative 20 by negative 4, so that would be positive 80. Because if I multiplied 4 times 4, that would be 16. 16 times 5, we can do it, but not as easily. Over 2 times 4, which is 8. So this would be 3 plus or minus square root 89 over 8. Can I simplify the square root of 89? No. So this is our answer. So always check and see if you can simplify it more. If not, then you're done. So if I had, for example, let's say I had 4 plus or minus square root 2 over 2, could I simplify this? You can't, because I don't have a whole number here that it goes into everything, and I can't divide into the square root. So this would be where I stop. If I had something like 4 plus or minus 2 square root 2 over 2, can I simplify this? Yeah. How do I simplify it? Divide all the whole numbers by 2. So this would be 2 plus or minus 1 square root 2, which is just square root 2, over 1. And do I need the 1 on the bottom? No. So this would be my answer. So this one we can't simplify. This one we can. All right, let's do number 8. What should I do first for number 8?
You should move 8 and 6.
No, you move to
Add 3.
Why would I rather add 3t squared? Perfect, because we like it when our squared term is positive. It'll make it easier for us to factor or anything like that. Here we're using the quadratic, so we're just using the numbers, so it really doesn't matter. You'd end up with the same thing, but it's just going to be a little bit easier. So this would be 0 is equal to 3t squared minus 8t plus 6. What should I do next? Label. We have A, B, and C, and then we plug in.
A plus or minus square root A squared minus 4 times 3 times 6 divided by 2 times 3.
Awesome. Perfect.
Wow.
So this would be 8 plus or minus, what is 8, negative 8 squared? 64. And I have 4 times 3 times 6. So it'd be 12 times 6. Perfect. So negative 72 over 6. What is 64 minus 72?
Negative 8.
Awesome, negative 8 over 6. And let's see, can I simplify the square root of negative 8?
Yeah.
How?
2 and 4.
2 and 4. 2 and 2. So do I have any pairs?
Yeah.
I have a pair of 2s. So 2 comes to the outside. What else comes to the outside?
So am I.
The I.
So you can simplify if it has a pair.
Yeah. And whatever doesn't have a pair stays on the inside. Yeah. I'm going to do that in the next step. So I have 2. So it's 8 plus or minus 2i square root 2 over 6. Can I simplify this? I can divide everything by 2. So because this has a whole number 2, I can simplify.
If you leave it like that, you're getting kind of wrong.
Partial credit. I square root 2 over 3. So 13 says determine the number and type of solutions of the equation. So how would I do that?
Find the discriminant.
Find the discriminant. What's the formula for the discriminant?
B squared minus 4AC.
Perfect. B squared minus 4ac.
Easiest formula of all time.
Even easier than b over 2 squared.
Maybe.
So what do I do before I plug in my a, b, and c?
You get the 15 go on your side.
I have to add 15 to the other side. So this is 2x squared minus 8x plus 15 is equal to 0. Now I can label my a, b, and c and plug it in. So what would I get when I plug it in?
64 minus 4 times negative 8. Negative 8.
So 64 minus
120.
120.
Yeah, it's going to be imaginary.
So this would be what?
Imaginary.
Negative 56. How many imaginary solutions? 2. Perfect. Since my discriminant is negative, that means I have 2 imaginary solutions. What if my discriminant was positive?
2 real.
2 real. What if my discriminant was 0?
1 real.
1 real. And again, if my discriminant's negative,
2.
2 imaginary.
2 imaginary.
So what's 1 imaginary?
Skip these, you don't have to know how to do them. So for number 16, you can